So Alok, I think this is the first time we're finally meeting after we e-met last year. And I really want to talk about that because for me that moment was so defining in terms of what it did to me as a person, as a brand, and to my entire team. It was an extremely, extremely emotional meeting the first time around, and I want to talk about that. So how it started was that we dressed you in a beautiful outfit for one of your events. And when we got the pictures, we were just so excited as an entire team. We kind of sat down. We actually had a meeting on like, how do we want to do it? And we were like, we want an entire grid, but we don't want to put it up without putting Alok's work with it. So we chose the bits that resonated with us and we put it up there. And after that we went into like a team meeting. It was like a 5-year plan meeting. So the entire team was there, the CEO, the finance and accounts and everybody, and we're sitting there. And my social head Shruti, she's like, we're losing a lot of followers. And I opened my Instagram and I was like, well, why is that happening? So they said, because people are reacting to Alok's posts. And I don't really need to get into what the reaction was because it was just so absolute, that it was the first time that we saw that kind of unfollowing, like 4,000 in about an hour. And the meeting is going on and I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out, let these people go. And I was like, it doesn't bother me anyway, these weren't the right people to be on our page anyway. But it just kept on like a windfall, And so luckily for me, I'm ADHD. And while the meeting was going on, I went into my phone, and I quickly made that post saying thank you for all the ones who are showing us love for this, and goodbye to everyone who wants to leave and has already left. And before I did that, I sent it to you saying, Alok, I really want to post this. Are you okay with that? And I did not expect you to actually write me such a long message back saying, thank you, essentially. That already in itself was really surprising and moving for me, but what followed was what really impacted me so much, and which is why we're here today. The next morning, I remember I was driving to work and my team started sending me a bunch of messages. Have you seen what Alok has posted? Have you seen what Alok has posted? And I was like, I haven't seen it yet, guys. As soon as I reached office, they're like, Shubhika, you need to comment on their post. You need to comment on their post. And I was like, guys, give me a minute. And I just went into my stock room and your post actually just was so moving because it spoke about your experience of what we did. And I, for 20 minutes, just kept crying because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I had to do something so basic, for the lack of a better word, or something so simple for it to actually mean so much for you to post about it that way. And I don't think I've ever been the same again. My brand hasn't been the same again. Nothing we do at Papa Don't Preach is the same again. We don't approach campaigns the same way. We don't approach activity that we do with our karigars and our teammates the same again. But I really want to know what it was like for you.
First, I want to say 4,000 people in 1 hour. That's a testament to the power of queerness, right? That ability to reframe is so important because it's the message I'm trying to show the world, which is not everyone is ready for you. Not everyone can understand the medicine. Most people mistake it as poison. So rather than dwelling on the people who aren't ready and who repel, focus on those magnetic connections that you have. And that's what I felt in that moment with you, is so much of the lesson that I've been learning as an adult is I have to be ready to receive love when it's given. I'm so ready to receive hate. That's how I was conditioned. And I think, especially growing up in an Indian household, that's how so many of us are conditioned, is that we're never good enough, or shame is the only currency that we know, often before love. But in that moment, there were so many love letters being written in the DMs, in the comment sections, but in the clothing. When I put on that outfit, it was a love letter to everyone who saw it, do you love yourself enough to wear this?
Wow.
When we posted those photos, it's a love letter. And that's what I'm trying to do in my life over and over again, is to make that impossible choice of love over fear, even when it's scary and confusing. And I'm so happy to meet you because I needed that. I think in my career and in my life, it's often been other South Asian people that have been my biggest detractors because they project their own insecurities on me. And that cut is the deepest when it's your own. But then that love is also the deepest when it's your own. And that moment for me showed me why I love our people and why I love South Asian clothing and what the power of fashion is, why I care about fashion. I mean, obviously it's about looking good. I mean, yeah. But it's also about this.
Yeah.
It's about holding a mirror to the world and saying, why do you have such a narrow perspective on what beauty is? You're not just hurting me, you're hurting yourself.
The first time that you wore a dress, finally, and stepped out, you felt so carefree and giddy. And it was the first time that you actually felt as one with your body and not disconnected. So I want to ask you about that dress. I was wondering what it was, and I just want to know.
It was a hideous dress, to be honest. I no longer have her. She served her purpose.
Right.
I got her secondhand, thrifting in San Francisco, and it was like neon pink, neon blue, and like white, and it was giving very like Little House on the Prairie.
No.
Very like modest wear.
Right.
And I think that what compelled me about it was just so colorful.
Right.
Like it looked like the sky.
Right.
The fit wasn't that flattering, it wasn't that noteworthy, but none of that mattered at the time because what it was color, and what it was I deserved to be seen. And I remember I wore it just on my college campus and I was walking down the street and everyone knew who I was. There's just like, oh, there's that person again being that person. But they didn't understand that like worlds were shifting inside of me.
Wow.
Because I had wanted to do this for so long. I had wanted to wear a dress in public for so long. I'd wanted to be that person who unapologetically walked down a street wearing what they wanted to wear because I'd seen people like that. And I had seen the distance between me and them. And I had seen that there was never going to be a future where I felt comfortable enough in myself. And there I was living it. And I think that story matters so much to me because oftentimes people ask me how I'm able to have so much compassion, even to joke about these 4,000 people in an hour. But then I remember that I could have been one of those 4,000 people.
Yeah.
In fact, I probably would have been a few years ago because I had so much self-hatred that when confronted with authenticity, I couldn't look because I couldn't look at myself.
Yeah.
And how did I get to be one of those people who stayed around was actually a journey. And that's what fashion has always been for me, is it's been a tool in my healing journey of actually being able to accept myself first, and then two, beyond self-acceptance, to say to the world, I believe that this is beautiful. It's not enough, I think. We hear a lot of this rhetoric of like unlearning beauty standards.
Yeah.
Unlearning Western gender norms. But I'm like, the next step is actually saying I am beautiful, claiming and standing in our truth. And how I could go from wanting to disappear myself, to erase myself off of this earth, to being able to be in a really questionable neon bright dress is a story of love.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with me. And I love that you spoke so lovingly about fashion, about it being a tool, that it is empowering.
You know, some of my fondest memories growing up were getting ready for potluck dinners in the small town in Texas that I grew up in, where the sort of Indian immigrant community was so close, and we'd spend hours getting ready, and I'd be peering over, watching my mom and my grandmother and my sister get into saris, and I'd feel this deep sense of grief that I couldn't be part of that ritual. And for so long in my life, I was made to feel as if I had to separate my gender and my queerness from my Indianness. And I think that's what moves me so much about working with Indian fashion brands, is because I thought that those parts of myself could never be integrated. But I hear you, which is that the industry is still economically indebted and structured by a kind of traditional binary gendered structure through marriage. But this is, I think, my response to everyone who says some iteration of the question, we want to be here, but here's where we're at.
Yeah.
Which is, that's a false binary. That's actually my answer to every question in the world. It's a false binary. We can and we will do both at the same time.
Right.
How do we reach people where they're at while having a little glitch in the system that creates a kind of kernel of possibility where people start dreaming for something bigger?
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at your brand. What I'm wearing right now is obscene. It's so glamorous, so flamboyant. Even 5-10 years ago, people would have looked at this like, what are you talking about? We can't even see that in wedding wear.
Yeah.
But you're entering a genre and you're interrupting it. And that's what we have to do, is subtly show that we have the chops, that we know what we're doing, and elevate people's consciousness at the same time. What I'd really like to see Indian brands do is to recognize that accepting LGBTQ people is not about being politically correct. It's just about being correct, because LGBTQ people are your customer base as well.
Right.
So it's not checking off a checklist, diversity checklist, to put a trans person in your campaign. It's actually just being honest. Okay, yeah, trans people can also wear this garment. Cool. And it's about doing exactly what you did with your brand. When you get backlash, it's about standing for something and saying, hey, we don't indulge this. We don't cater to this. And the reason people don't do that is because they're moving out of fear.
Yeah.
And here's what I want to tell all the brands who are listening. Fear is the worst brand marketing strategy. If you're constantly moving from fear, why are you an artist?
I agree. Yeah.
Because to be an artist actually is to move from love and creation. Our entire craft is based off of being in love with wonder and imagination. And what fear does is it abbreviates imagination. It constricts you. I think it's more helpful for me, rather than saying accepting LGBTQ people is about political correctness, to say accept yourself as a fashion designer.
Right.
Because the purpose of being a fashion designer is to create fashion, not to create uniforms.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you need to question why you're in this industry to begin with. Because I know the reason I love fashion is because I'm constantly creating something new that hasn't been seen before.
Absolutely. I think find a glitch in the system. I think that's the mantra that we could all work from. How do you view spotlight? Because I know that you are somebody who's had to live in the spotlight even when you didn't want it on. But now that you have the platform, do you feel like it actually helps you and empowers you, or do you feel like it kind of limits you because of this whole cancel culture? You know, like should I just, what if I say something wrong, in your own self-exploration? Right.
Every answer to any question you're going to give me, I pretty much have the same response, which is both and.
Right.
Both and, both and, both and. I really believe the most honest thing in the world is that truth is polyamorous, and it is possible to have many truths at the same time. So on the one hand, I am so grateful that people listen to me, because there are so many millions of people like me in the world who people don't even notice in their own neighborhoods, in their own locales. And I think about this especially as a privileged upper caste and upper class and US citizen. around how many hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, the trans-hijra community in India has been advocating for even a sliver of recognition, right? So it is possible to acknowledge that kind of power while also saying what so often people see is still not me. It's a fiction they create in order to serve their interests. And that's what a spotlight does, is it draws attention to one coordinate. But in order to do that, it has to disappear and obfuscate everything else around it.
Right.
So a spotlight is a great metaphor for a kind of humanity I'm not interested in. I want a humanity that integrates all parts of me, that can understand that one can still have power and still have grief and pain, that one can still be right and still be wrong, that one can still have privilege and still be oppressed. I want love. And love is a very different thing than a spotlight, because what a spotlight still rehearses is the idea of a spectacle, which is you're on a stage and I'm in the audience. That's not friendship. Friendship is you and I are speaking on a couch and we're experiencing each other as whole human beings. And that's what I'm seeking so desperately in my art, is true love. And what love looks like is not just an acknowledgement of my humanity, but an affirmation of my humanity. And what love looks like is you can affirm my humanity because you've affirmed your own. And that's the deeper question. We need to put spotlights on other people because we have a refusal and inability to see ourselves.
Right.
That work has to begin internally. And so I think so often what I've had to really realize in my life is I began this work because I wanted to be seen. But then I realized actually the spotlight prevents you from being seen.
I agree. Yeah, beautiful. Alok, I actually was really interested to meet you, to speak to you as a creative person. Because I struggle with the who am I question so often. It kind of helps me define my brand and then kind of break it again and redefine it. So I'm interested in always speaking to creatives like you to understand what is your process like, because when I'm making a collection, it kind of just takes over my everything for like 30 days, 60 days, and then it churns, and then once it leaves me, as soon as the shoot is done, I'm over it. Like I don't even like any of the pieces I made. If you ask me what I feel about that sari, I won't have any emotion because it's already done. I'm on to the next. For somebody who is on the stage so often and like that's the work you do, I want to understand what your creative process is.
Yeah. So first of all, my creative art form is living.
Wow.
It's about being alive, not just existing.
Right.
Which means that if I'm sad, I'm going to be crying for 30 minutes. Okay, I was lying 5 hours. Which means that if I'm happy, I'm going to be laughing like it's my favorite song.
Wow.
And I think that to be an artist, you have to be tapped into your emotion in a world that tempts us to numb ourselves to it and to desensitize ourselves to our pain and the pain of other people. So the first element of my creative process is noticing. It's why I love living in a city like New York, is I people watch. I sit there on the subway and I notice, how do people crease their eyes when they're smiling? What are people wearing and why? Why are people wearing all black when it's cold outside? That's so counterintuitive. Don't you want to be happy?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so I watch, notice, and like a sponge, I'm absorbing, and that's what comes out in the work. The work is all one elaborate mirror. The work is all one elaborate portrait of what I'm painting, of what I see around me. And then when it's out into the world, like you said, it takes a life of its own.
Right.
It's no longer me.
Yeah.
It's something else. And I think that was a really important development as an artist, is because at first I had such a personal investment in everyone understanding exactly what I intended. And now I'm so less interested in being understood.
Yeah.
because I know that, of course, no one's going to understand what I intended because they're not me. They're going to have their own relationship with the work, and that says more about them than it actually does about me. And so I relieve myself of that, and I understand that each work takes on its own soul, its own spirit, and lives elsewhere.
No longer yours.
No longer.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is really central to being a public-facing artist, is that once you are no longer writing poems in the quiet intimacy of your childhood bedroom, but you have thousands, if not millions of people immersed in it, then you have to relieve yourself and say, your projection is not my reality. And that's okay. Your projection is also real. It's just not mine. There's multiple realities. Then in terms of what I'm working through right now in this very moment, is when I'm on stage, I'm not performing, I'm actually being my most true self. It often feels like when I'm not on stage is when I'm having to play pretend.
Right.
And when I'm on stage, I'm giving people the true depth of my pain, my loss, my humor. And when it's over, it's really hard to return to the world. It's really hard to go back to your hotel room, to take off your makeup, to like get out of your glamorous outfit.
It's like your superhero costume.
Gosh.
Like you put it on and you're whatever you want to be.
You have to sit there in solitude and you have to be like, why am I even doing this? Like, I just feel so depleted. So what I'm getting better now at doing is bringing people with me for the come down. So I love touring with friends so that I have someone afterwards to be like, hey, you're a human being, or like, good job, or you're allowed to rest, or let's go eat. Because otherwise I get so mean to myself. And I'm like, did I communicate myself well enough? Did people understand the urgency of it? And it's hard because how can I expect the entire world to change after 1 hour of vulnerability, you know? So you have to confront the gradual process. And I think that's what's most devastating, how slow change is.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Alok. Do you ever get nervous before going up on stage?
All the time.
Yeah.
But nervousness, like fear, are just people I hang out with and invite to dinner. They're gonna always be there, so I just greet them like I would any other guest.
I'm gonna think of it as this next time, because I get really nervous. I was petrified to see you, but I'm glad I got over that. So I've actually been brought up in a family that was extremely spiritual, not religious but spiritual, and they allowed me to kind of explore that on my own through my own practices. So I was very fortunate with that kind of an upbringing. But I want to understand from you, how do you view queerness, the intersection between queerness and spirituality? Because more so in India, right? Like spirituality and religion are just so fused together that you can't really tell one from the other, whereas they are like poles apart. So how do you find your place in that?
Yeah, I'm a very spiritual person, and my spirituality is love. And I think the most difficult work I'm doing on this planet right now is to find love, because it's always there.
It is.
Even if it's just been buried and buried and buried, it's always there. And that's the only thing that makes life livable to me, love. You know, my sister just gave birth a few weeks ago, and I have been spending so much time just watching her hold my nibbling. And my nibbling was born premature, so my sister has to spend time having what's called skin-to-skin contact in order to bond with this child. And I look at that and I'm like, we all need this. And I get so mad at every single political system in the world that denies that intrinsic need for vulnerability, that denies that without care we would have died, that someone heeded our call. And then I resolve every day to be the person that heeds the call and to give people that kind of connection, because we're still that baby and we forget it. And
I don't think we forget it. I think we crave for it. We just don't know how to cater to it or to nurture that. I don't think we forget that we were that baby. We forget others were that baby. We don't forget that we were, because we feel it.
Great point. Yeah. Great point. And I think that's so much of what my spiritual practice is being able to collapse that self and other distinction.
Yeah, the separateness.
And the only way to do that is through love. In so many renditions of the way that people describe my work or my bio, they'll say that I'm trying to challenge the gender binary, and that's not ambitious enough. I'm trying to challenge ultimately the separation of us versus them, of me and you. And the only way to do that is to say I love you, because what love actually requires in me is I need you, which means that in order for me to thrive on this earth, you must thrive, which means that your success is not a detriment to mine. In fact, it's essential to my own growth and success, which means that we're in this together.
I just, as a friend, probably if I may call myself that, I want to know, are you happy, or if I could rephrase that, are you content?
I think I removed the word happiness and sadness from my life, and I replaced them with, am I existing or am I alive?
Right.
And what being alive for me means being able to feel present in my body in this moment in time. And that's a luxury for me, because I spent the majority of my life dissociated. And plot twist, I think the majority of people do. I think the majority of people are living someone else's fantasy.
I feel it all the time.
Right?
In myself, yeah.
And I'm trying to get better at recognizing, oop, I'm not here right now, and returning to myself. And fashion has been part of that return. Being able to even just look at myself in the mirror and being like, the reason I'm wearing 17 colors right now is because I need to prove to myself that I'm alive.
Alok, that makes me fall back in love with fashion. I think I needed that. But in your journey, and I look at your book and it's really that small for a life that is actually just so big. Do you feel like you've served your purpose, or do you feel like there's more to Alok?
Oh, there's so much more. Wow. There's so many more books, but not even books. I feel like there's so many more conversations. This is my preferred artistic medium. I just want to wake up and have good conversations. I want to live a life that's the opposite genre of a small talk. And I just want to be vulnerable about how painful it is to be alive, and then in being honest about how painful it is, it hurts less. And I think that's what I know my purpose is to make the world hurt less. I'm just not sure how and where that's going to take me. So
before I started this conversation with you, I was extremely nervous. I think for a good 20 days before I saw you, I was just prepping with all the questions. And just last night, I was like, I'm not going to do any of this. And that happened because of the conversation we had, the 5-minute conversation on the phone, and you just put me at ease, just hearing your voice. And so when you say you're a spiritual person, I want to tell you that when I read your book sitting miles away from here, I feel it. And when I spoke to you on the phone, I felt it. And when I sit here with you, I feel it. And I want to thank you for what that has done to me, to my team, to my brand. When you put up that post and the whole backlash happened, and each time I now speak to somebody and they ask me what was the turning moment in your career, I come back to this, and you've given me that. But also what's beautiful that's happened in India is that we randomly invited 5 or 4 brides to come into our studio and talk about, why did you choose Papa Don't Preach? Why are you a Papa Don't Preach bride, etc. And 3 out of the 4, and these were randomly picked brides, they said, the day we saw Alok Menon's post on your page is when we decided that we want to be a Papa Don't Preach bride. So I think that when you say that we should, whenever we act out of fear, it does backfire. It does not translate, it does not transcend. But what we did, or what happened with our interaction, was just because it was so organic and it just was what it was. It actually got translated, and it actually reached brides who are actually, can I say cishet women, living a very binary life, but it reached them. And I think that if I may tell you that your purpose of love, of putting love out there in the world, I think you're succeeding in that. And happy to be a channel for that, with my fashion, with my clothes, or just our conversations. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Which is your favorite Bollywood movie?
Cocktail or beer soda?
Wow, okay. What's your go-to first date outfit?
There's no go-to here. It really depends on the person.
Oh, okay. And what does this person have to do to ask you out on a date?
My ideal scenario would be a note and a book, so that even if the date didn't go well, at least I would have a new book.
Oh, how lovely. What's the last thing that you Googled?
I Google really every question that I have around the world.
Right.
So I think I was I was Googling why we burp.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One fashion trend that needs to leave and never come back.
Oh my god, so many, but the idea that there are fashion trends.
I agree, and everything that I get asked is what is the fashion trend, and I say I don't follow
No.
trends. So yes, high five. Okay, tell me one thing that no one knows of you or about you.
I'm a deep lover of fantasy and science fiction.
Oh, okay, yeah, we didn't know that. What's your favorite Indian dish?
Right now, a nice masala dosa.
Wow. Okay. What is the one vice you wish you could give up?
Scrolling.
I don't think that's happening anytime soon for any of us. Which one artist inspires you the most?
So many people, but Sylvester, the queen of disco in the 70s.
Okay. Your favorite person who you stalk on Instagram?
Papa Don't Preach, hello.
Okay, we can end with that.